Have you ever wondered, how did 6 days in 1967 manage to change the Middle East forever? This isn't a rhetorical question. In fact, it's the very essence of what we're going to explore today. The year 1967 was a critical turning point in the history of the Middle East, marked by an event known as the Arab-Israeli War, or more commonly the Six-Day War. This war, though short, was significant. It wasn't a simple conflict between two nations, but a complex web of political, military, and ideological battles involving four key countries: Israel, Egypt, Syria, and Jordan. Each had their own stakes in the war, their own reasons to fight, and their own consequences to face. The Six-Day War was more than just a series of military engagements. It was a pivotal moment that reshaped the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East in ways that are still being felt today. The repercussions of this war have echoed through the decades, influencing policies, alliances, and conflicts that shape the Middle East as we know it. So, let's dive into this pivotal moment in history and see how 6 days reshaped the Middle East. Before understanding the war itself, it's crucial to grasp the pre-war tensions that were bubbling beneath the surface. The Middle East in the lead-up to the Arab-Israeli War of 1967 was a region fraught with political tension and burgeoning nationalism. A key figure in this political landscape was Gamal Abdel Nasser, the charismatic president of Egypt. Nasser was a leading figure in the pan-Arab movement, advocating for unity among Arab nations and championing the cause of Palestinian self-determination. His fiery rhetoric and ambitious policies often put him on a collision course with Israel, stoking the embers of a long-standing conflict. One of the pivotal events leading up to the war was Nasser's decision to nationalize the Suez Canal in 1956. This move was seen as a direct challenge to Western influence in the region, causing an international crisis that further strained relations with Israel. Fast forward to 1967, and the tension was palpable. Nasser, buoyed by a military pact with Syria and Jordan, made the fateful decision to close the Straits of Tiran to Israeli shipping. This was a crucial waterway for Israel, linking the Red Sea to the Mediterranean, and its closure was seen by Israel as an act of war. Meanwhile, misinformation and miscommunication were adding fuel to the fire. False reports of Israeli troop movements along the Syrian border led Nasser and his allies to believe that an Israeli attack was imminent. This, coupled with escalating border skirmishes and a climate of intense nationalism, created a pressure cooker situation. The international community watched on with trepidation as diplomatic efforts to defuse the situation proved futile. The United Nations peacekeeping forces were withdrawn from Sinai at Egypt's request, leaving a power vacuum and a sense of impending doom. With tensions at a boiling point, the stage was set for a conflict that would shake the Middle East. June 5, 1967 marked the beginning of what would come to be known as the Six-Day War. In the early morning of that fateful day, Israel launched a surprise attack on Egyptian airfields. This daring assault, known as Operation Focus, aimed to cripple Egypt's air force, the largest and most threatening in the Arab world. By the end of the day, nearly the entire Egyptian air force was decimated, creating a significant shift in the balance of power. On the second day, June 6th, Israel turned its attention to the ground war. The Israeli Defense Forces, or IDF, launched attacks on multiple fronts. In the south, they pushed into the Sinai Peninsula, previously held by Egypt. In the north, they clashed with Syrian and Jordanian forces. Day 3, June 7th, found Jerusalem at the heart of the conflict. Jordanian-held East Jerusalem and the Old City were captured by the IDF, bringing the whole city under Israeli control for the first time since the state's inception in 1948. The iconic image of Israeli paratroopers at the Western Wall became a symbol of this historic moment. On June 8th, the war expanded to the west bank of the Jordan River, with Israel seizing control from Jordanian forces. This move further expanded Israel's territory and strategically encircled Jerusalem. By the fifth day, Israel had turned its focus to the Golan Heights, a strategic plateau controlled by Syria. Fierce fighting ensued, but the IDF's determination and superior tactics led to victory. By the end of the day, The majority of the Golan Heights was under Israeli control. The final day, June 10th, saw the conclusion of the war. The remaining Syrian forces were driven out, and the entirety of Golan Heights fell into Israeli hands. The Six-Day War, a conflict that had spanned multiple nations and seen intense fighting, had ended. In just 6 days, the map of the Middle East had been dramatically redrawn. The war's outcome had far-reaching effects, forever changing the political, social, and geographical landscape of the region. It was a war of 6 days, but its impact echoes through the decades. The war may have been short, but its aftermath was anything but. In the immediate wake of the Six-Day War, the landscape of the Middle East was forever transformed. Israel emerged from the conflict with control over vast territories, the Sinai Peninsula and Gaza Strip from Egypt, the West Bank and East Jerusalem from Jordan, and the Golan Heights from Syria. These territorial gains more than tripled the size of Israel's pre-war territory, a clear demonstration of their military prowess. But with great power comes great responsibility, and Israel's territorial victories brought with them a host of complex issues. The newly conquered territories were home to over 1 million Palestinians, a population whose fate would become a central issue in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict that persists to this day. In the long term, the '67 war drastically altered the geopolitical landscape of the Middle East. It marked the end of pan-Arab nationalism, a political ideology that had previously dominated the region and led to a shift towards state-centric politics. The war also laid the groundwork for the Yom Kippur War of 1973, a conflict that further highlighted the deep-seated tensions between Israel and its Arab neighbors. On a broader scale, the Six-Day War had significant global implications as well. It affected the balance of power during the Cold War, with the United States and the Soviet Union increasingly drawn into the Middle East conflict. The war also changed the dynamics of the United Nations, with Resolution 242 laying the groundwork for future peace negotiations in the region. Despite the passage of more than 5 decades, the repercussions of the '67 war continue to reverberate in the Middle East. The issues of territorial sovereignty, national identity, and the rights of displaced peoples that were brought to the forefront during the war remain unresolved. With each passing year, the conflict becomes more deeply ingrained in the collective memory of the region, shaping political discourse, national identities, and individual lives. The echoes of the '67 war can still be heard in the Middle East today. So, what have we learned from those 6 days in 1967? The '67 Arab-Israeli War, also known as the Six-Day War, was a pivotal event that has shaped the history and politics of the Middle East. In a matter of 6 days, the landscape of the region changed dramatically, leaving an indelible imprint that is still felt today. The war was more than a territorial dispute. It was a clash of national pride, ideologies, and deep-seated historical grievances. Israel's swift victory over Egypt, Syria, and Jordan showcased its military prowess and had a profound effect on the regional balance of power. The war resulted in Israel's control of the Sinai Peninsula, the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Golan Heights, territories that continue to be contentious issues in today's geopolitics. The '67 war also triggered a wave of change in the Arab world. It led to a soul-searching moment for the Arab nations, questioning their military capabilities and political leadership. The defeat paved the way for a shift in political dynamics, leading to the rise of more radical ideologies and movements. But why is it so important to understand this 6-day event in the context of current Middle Eastern politics? Well, the '67 war and its aftermath are intrinsically tied to the ongoing Israeli-Palestinian conflict, the status of Jerusalem, and the broader Arab-Israeli relations. It's a stark reminder of the enduring nature of territorial disputes and the complexities of achieving lasting peace in the region. And let's not forget, it's not just about historical understanding. The war's outcome and its subsequent developments have direct implications on the policies and strategies of the global powers today. From the United States' role in the Middle East to Russia's stance on Syria, the ripples of the '67 war can be traced in the geopolitical chessboard of the 21st century. While the '67 war lasted only 6 days, its impact continues to shape the course of history in the Middle East.